Alright, so today we're going to be talking about a topic I've been actually trying to avoid, but people have been asking me, and that is Sakura versus Delta, mainly because these characters in particular are pretty lacking in feats, so it's kind of difficult to kind of read in between the lines and decide who's stronger. And at first, I thought it was very clear cut. At first, kind of going into it without much thinking about it too much, I thought that Delta might take it, but the more I kind of thought about it, the more I thought that it actually might go the other way. But before we get into it, if you guys like more videos like this, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and let's jump straight into it. Alright, so before I talk about exactly who I think would win in a fight, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the characters and the few feats and things and showings of power that we do see them have throughout the Boruto anime, right? Again, we're using adult Sakura versus Delta. So starting with Sakura, we know that she doesn't have a ton of feats, but we do know we can use the feats that she did use in the war arc and previously, because we do know that she's gotten a little bit stronger since then. And again, we do know at the end of Shippuden, she was able to damage Kaguya and break off one of her horns, which can be taken to significantly wank her as a character, right? You can really get her up there. And Swag Kage actually used this as an argument to determine partially why she would be able to one-shot an alive Madara, not necessarily beat him in a fight, but just showed that she is physically much stronger than that character, right? So we do know that she is insanely powerful, and in Boruto, keep in mind she got significantly stronger after many years. She keeps up with Shinichiha, who was able to pace with a fatigued Sasuke, even though he wasn't quite on Sasuke's level, which was debunked by Naruto shortly after. But we do say that he's able to react to Sasuke's teleportation, and that he seems to be a fairly strong character who is definitely above, like, you know, the Otsutsuki level threats that they fight. But he's definitely a very significantly powerful character. And as Sakura enters the fight, she literally blitzes him. Keep in mind, he's got eyes with Mangekyo Sharingans all over his head, and we see that she's physically stronger than him during their fight. You can see this a couple times, especially in the anime, when she throws like a giant boulder at him, and he gets like pushed back, and the only way he can kind of get around that is to like break through it, right? And we also see that she's able to compete with him taijutsu. She doesn't take him out. She's not the person to take him out of the fight, but we do see her fight kind of on par with him, and she actually does really well until she gets pinned in the water, and then Naruto and Sasuke join her in the fight. She also has a couple more feats, but I'm going to mention those later on when they become more relevant. And let's talk about Delta for a little bit. So again, what most people know about Delta is just that she was able to fight with Naruto using his Sage of Six Paths, but it's actually revealed later that Naruto was heavily holding back. Naruto, if you guys notice and you guys look at the manga and read the panel, he actually did worse when he transformed into his Sage of Six Paths than he did in his base, right? He was actually blocking all of her attacks. She wasn't really hitting him at all in base. And there are also multiple instances in the fight where it's super clear that he's actually holding back, right? Kawaki literally mentions this, that they're kind of like dancing, how Naruto's just kind of like leading her away from all the bystanders so she doesn't attack them, right? That was Naruto's main focus, and while doing all of that, he's even managing to throw some jutsus in there. Naruto himself states that he was pretending to be weak to gain intel, which makes a lot of sense. You're fighting somebody you don't know a lot about, so you're gonna kind of downplay yourself a little bit, right? You're not gonna intentionally let them like beat you up, but once you get a kind of a feel for them, you can kind of hold back a little bit, because you don't need to go full power. You don't need to kill this person. And even after the fight, he kind of proves this, because he says that he went through all the trouble of keeping her alive. So he wants to take her to the village and interrogate her before she kind of like self-destructs. So you might be wondering, why did he actually transform if he doesn't actually need it and she doesn't really scale to a base Naruto? Well, that's probably as like a safety precaution, right? She has these eye beams that can counter regenerative abilities, and obviously Naruto doesn't want everybody watching to get hurt as well. We even see that when she does go to attack Himawari, Kawaki is fast enough to get there in front of the blast and absorb it. And when we see Naruto finally actually getting serious, he finishes her off very quickly with a massive Rasengan, even though we know that she's able to absorb ninjutsu. We also know that Delta's even weaker than Boros, which is stated by Code, and Boro was ultimately pressured and defeated by a Team 7, albeit with the Boro Shiki Amp on their side, but this was after Boro already lost his core and he became larger and stronger. Seeing that the core was not actually supposed to be destroyed, it's likely that the base Boro was the Boro that Code was talking about that was stronger than Delta. And base Boro, we know, was pressured by Team 7 many times. He was blitzed by Sarada using her Chidori and took significant damage from Boruto when he used his Rasengan, which was amped by the resonating karmas. And this was all before the release of Boroshiki, which ultimately took Boro out. So we know that Boro does not scale to a significantly weaker Momoshiki, which also scales below Sage of Six Paths Naruto, which kind of debunks the fact that Delta and Sage of Six Paths Naruto are on the same level, because clearly we're not. Like 4 or 5 times during that fight, we see that she's way weaker. And using this information, we can kind of imply that if they were to fight, Sakura would be definitely more powerful, right? So let me give an example. As we know through the training with Sakura, and narratively speaking, Sarada was exponentially slower and weaker than adult Sakura, right? even when they're training and Sakura isn't even trying to hurt Sarada, she mentions that one hit would be lethal, and then she ends up tripping, and then we see that Sakura ultimately stops punching mid-motion because she wants to refrain from actually, you know, hurting her daughter, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious that Sarada is way slower and weaker than Sakura, but now that we've kind of established that she's way weaker and slower, how is this same Sarada able to blitz Boro, right? Blitz and heavily damage Boro, destroying his core, right? And we can tell that Boro's not holding back, right? He is trying his hardest to make sure that his core does not get destroyed, right? That's kind of what's keeping him alive, right? And we see that Sarada is able to blitz and destroy that same core, and this is also the same Boro that's stronger than Delta, right? Now, Delta does have some abilities that can counter Sakura's regeneration, which is a big part of her character, in the form of her eye beams that, you know, counter regenerative abilities, but that is assuming that she could even hit Sakura with them, you know what I mean? Because we know that Kawaki can outpace them. We can also assume that she's probably physically weaker as well, as she hasn't really shown any insane feats of strength besides being able to keep up with a significantly not trying Naruto, right? And we also know that Delta can absorb ninjutsu to a certain extent, but that really won't help her too much in this fight because Sakura pretty much only uses physical attacks. So I mean, again, these characters don't have a ton of feats, but using the feats that they have and the statements and kind of reading in between the lines, it's very easy to come to the conclusion that Sakura actually ends up winning this fight. Again, if I missed anything, just definitely let me know down below. This is just my personal opinion on who I think would win this fight and why. Again, I always make a couple of videos a week, and I actually have some in mind, such as ranking the dojutsus, power scaling the Baruto, Kage, and Jonin, and etc. If you guys like more videos in this type of content, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I really appreciate it, and it really helps the channel out, and I'll catch you in the next one.